Welcome everyone to our first virtual event of 2025. I'm Tunde Wackman, Chief Development Officer at World Central Kitchen, and I'm thrilled you could join us today. Before we get started, just a couple of quick housekeeping notes. Would you please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your Zoom screen to submit any questions you may have throughout the event. And if time allows, we'll do our best. We'll try to get to your questions as we can at the end. Our team will also be responding in real time and using the chat feature to provide helpful links and articles about our work and try to get to your questions. Now let's get started. This year is incredibly special for WCK as we celebrate our 15th anniversary of serving meals in the aftermath of disasters around the world. To put this milestone into perspective, and I'm so proud to share these stats with you, we've served over 450 million meals to those communities in need, responded to over 190 disasters addressing climate, humanitarian, and community crises, connected with communities in over 50 countries and 40 US states, and engaged more than 450 chefs globally through our Chef Corps program, who often serve as our first eyes and ears on the ground when crises emerge. And we've partnered with thousands of restaurants to support local economies and neighbors in need. We delivered meals every means imaginable, by car, by boat, by ATV, donkey, helicopter, you name it, we've probably done it. And we're ready to take on the next 15 years. We've always operated a little differently at WCK in the humanitarian and disaster response space, but our unconventional approach in the disaster space is always centered on meeting the immediate needs of communities, which has made this impact possible that we're here to share with you today. And all of our work, this organization and all of our work didn't happen overnight. It's taken many years of learning, adapting, and fine-tuning our responses. It all started with the earthquake in Haiti, where our founder, Chef Jose Andres, saw the urgent need for the organization, like WCK as it is today in 2010. Food is always a critical need, but especially in the first hours, days, and weeks after a disaster. Today, I'm joined by several of our incredible WCK team members who will share pivotal moments that have shaped who we are and how we will move forward at WCK. To kick things off, I'm delighted to introduce Fiona Donovan, WCK's Vice President of Response Administration. Fiona has led dozens of responses and has witnessed how WCK has evolved over the years to better serve communities. Welcome, Fiona. Fiona, let's get started where it all began. Our very first response in Haiti. That moment truly set the foundation for who we are today. Now, it predates all of us with Jose on the ground making those first connections. But Fiona, can you share what that response was like and what was happening at the time?
Yes, thank you, Tunde. And it's really great to be here with you all today to share a little bit more about the origin story of WCK and how Chef Jose Andres conceptualized what we're known for today. So in 2010, after the devastating 7.0 magnitude earthquake affected hundreds of thousands of people in Haiti, Jose knew that he needed to get on the ground and do something to help. He didn't know exactly what that would look like at the time, but upon arrival, started listening to local community members so he could learn what was needed and figure out how best to support. The need for life-saving food aid was critical. He saw that really quickly. And Jose couldn't understand why there wasn't a big organization of chefs there to feed people. And this is when he had a realization that he often reflects back on now. When there's an earthquake, you send search and rescue teams to save lives. When there's an explosion, you send doctors and nurses to care for people. So when there are hungry people, why wouldn't you send chefs? They are the best at cooking, the most prepared experts to be feeding people in an emergency, and they know kitchens, they know food supplies, and they know how to cook. So this was and continues to be a very simple idea that's guided WCK ever since. Still in those very early days, Jose was learning how best to feed people in the aftermath of a crisis. And he's learned a lot. But at that time, one day he was on the ground in Haiti and he was preparing black beans and rice for a group of Haitian women. And after he served them, he realized that nobody was touching their beans. And Jose was not used to people sending his food back, and he was very confused. And then he realized what the problem was. He hadn't served the beans in the typical way that Haitians eat them, in a silky puree. So that's why nobody wanted his food. So from then on, it became a really top priority for WCK to serve meals that are culturally appropriate and always aligned with what people would normally eat in their day-to-day lives. It was just one of many lessons learned in those early days. At that time, Jose also became very interested in how he could contribute to building sustainable, resilient food systems after disasters, and really overall how he could improve people's lives through the power of food. All of these initial ideas, executed at a relatively small scale in Haiti, became part of the foundation of World Central Kitchen as we know it today.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. I'm just always amazed by how those early days in Haiti set the foundation for everything that we do today, always putting community, comfort, and humanity at the center of our work. Now, fast forward to 2017 and our response to Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico. That was a pivotal moment for WCK. How did that response differ from Haiti?
So Hurricane Maria really transformed the World Central Kitchen feeding model into what most of you are now familiar with. When Maria hit Puerto Rico, Chef Jose quickly realized that the needs would be enormous. There was no power or water, severely damaged infrastructure, a very slow government response, and on top of all of that, Puerto Rico is an island. So Jose pulled from his experience in Haiti and knew that the most important thing he could do was mobilize local chefs and community members across Puerto Rico to begin cooking as quickly as possible with whatever ingredients they could source locally. And WCK's response model didn't involve conducting long needs assessments to determine if people qualified for assistance, but rather our teams just started cooking and offering food and comfort to everyone because the entire island was impacted in one way or another, and every single person needed that nourishment. So Jose mobilized food trucks to cook. He set up an enormous sandwich making line inside a stadium and fired up paella pans everywhere he could find chefs to cook off of them, and really scaled the operation by empowering local leaders and chefs. And at the end of that response, WCK had served over 3.7 million meals. And we actually have a video from Jose from those very early days for you to get a better idea of what the response looked like.
Chef Manolo, one of the legendary chefs here in the island, really doing food with whatever we have. And then we have these amazing food operations, that is the food trucks, that we are sending them into the community. Say hi. Hi. To deliver to different ejidas, which are the elderly retirement, elderly centers. And they're doing a great job because if people cannot come, we reach them. And we can do 50 people here, 50 people there, 50 people there. Back here we have the trucks with the refrigerator. We have chicken, everything we've been getting. Inside we have the rice. In the other truck we have the fruits, the vegetables. And today we're gonna do, if God allows us, roughly between sandwiches and cochos, arroz con pollo, 8,000 meals. We already got the orders. We know where they're going. We deliver around 6 hours, so being big. But we are trying to make it into 10. We have a second operation, is already doing 2,000 meals, 2,000 arroz con pollo, and they are already taken to children's hospitals and etc. So before we know this is, we're gonna make over 100,000 meals by Sunday, probably more.
Wow. Thank you so much for setting the scene for us, Fiona. Now, I'll pass the mic to Laura Hayes, our Senior Manager of the Chef Corps. Laura recently sat down with Chef Matt Adler in DC to reflect on the incredible work of our Chef Corps members accomplished during the pandemic. She'll carry us into our next large-scale response, the COVID-19 pandemic. And over to you, Laura.
Thank you, Tunda. I'm Laura Hayes. I'm the Senior Manager of the Chef Corps at World Central Kitchen. I'm here with Chef Matt Adler. We're at Cucina Marini in Washington, D.C. He's the chef and partner here, and he's also one of the longest tenured Chef Corps members at World Central Kitchen. The Chef Corps is our global network of 450 prominent culinary leaders who make WCK more nimble around the world. Chefs are some of the most trusted and connected people in their communities, so they're often our first call in the immediate aftermath of a crisis. We give them a call and they help us get cooking as quickly as possible and best serve the local community with dignity. Chef Matt stepped up during one of our most demanding responses to date and one that shaped the future of the organization, the COVID-19 pandemic. It was an enormous challenge that required surprisingly simple solutions, like turning a baseball park into a giant relief kitchen or putting restaurants back to work feeding their neighbors. Thank you so much for being here today, Matt.
Oh, for sure. Thanks for having me.
You got it. I've known this guy for over 10 years, so this is a really conversation I've been looking forward to.
Great.
How did you first get involved with World Central Kitchen?
A friend of a friend reached out during Chefs for Feds in early 2019. WCK was activating in Washington, D.C. to help feed the furloughed federal workers who were out of work. We had a kitchen set up over by the Navy Memorial, and we're feeding about 7,000 people a day.
Oh my gosh, a lot of soups, right? I think it was pretty cold
a lot
out.
of soup, for sure.
Okay. But your biggest role kind of towards the beginning was as one of the leaders on our team at Nationals Park in 2020 at the start of the pandemic. Can you tell us a little bit about that massive operation?
Yeah, for sure. So we started small. We started in the same kitchen that we were working out of Chefs for Feds for. But the need was significantly more. You know, instead of having to produce 5 or 6 or 7,000 meals a day, I think we got up to about 18,000 meals, you know, at the height of the pandemic. So we really needed a larger space. And the baseball stadium was perfect because there was multiple kitchens. We were able to really kind of spread the team out. There was a lot of distancing there. It was a perfect environment for us to cook that food.
Were you already a Nats fan, or did that make you a Nats fan?
I was already a Nats fan. I moved down in 2013 as a Yankees fan, born and raised my whole life. But I worked by the ballpark. I got to know a lot of the people in the front office and became a Nats fan.
Awesome. And you've also told me that that was some of the most challenging but also rewarding moments of your career. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it was everything changed in hospitality overnight. I was, you know, in the process of opening a restaurant. I was doing a considerable amount of consulting work, and literally overnight, like, there was no work. So dealing with that part of it, of just like understanding what the future looked like, and also all of the challenges that were in front of us, just running this really big operation at Nats Park. It was definitely, it was an interesting couple of months for sure.
So you had to make huge quantities of food. What kind of goes into your calculation when you're thinking of what kind of recipes work best for that? And what were some of the meals you made out of the ballpark that really stuck with you?
There was a lot of trial and error. I don't think we really nailed the menu right off the bat. There were some days that were more successful than others in the beginning, at least. But, you know, everything's really kind of like a 1-pot meal or a 2-pot meal. So we always tried to have a starch, which was often rice or couscous or something like that. And then some kind of like a stew or braised, you know, vegetable dish or chili or chicken pot pie or something like that. Those are really the dishes that held up the best.
I actually got to tour the ballpark during this operation, and I remember the day that you guys were making the chicken pot pie, and that smell was incredible. It smelled like home, but a home for 30,000 people at a time. That was a really, really special day. Thanks for showing me the ropes.
Yeah, for sure.
So during the pandemic, World Central Kitchen also partnered with 2,500 restaurants across 400 cities in the U.S., including many of Matt's friends here in D.C. And when combined with our international pandemic response, we dispersed $172 million to restaurants who served 40 million meals. This response showed us the power of partnering with local food trucks, restaurants, and caterers in the immediate aftermath of disasters. This is the model where World Central Kitchen reimburses our partners for the meals they make for their neighbors in need. This also stimulates the economy at the same time, which is why we often turn to it. Matt, I'd love to know why you think, especially during the pandemic, so many restaurants joined this movement.
I mean, it was just, I mean, a lot of reasons. I think, you know, people in the hospitality industry immediately wanted to help. You know, they wanted to do something to support the community. This was a really good opportunity to do that. And also financially, I mean, revenue, you know, went from however much a restaurant was making to maybe, you know, 1/10 of that overnight with just doing takeout. So it was immediate revenue coming in. It allowed restaurants to keep their employees working, which was really important. You know, people, if revenue wasn't coming into the restaurants, people would be out of work. And sometimes some of the people working in restaurants weren't eligible for a lot of the aid, that was available from the government. So this was really a best case scenario.
Big picture, in the 6 years that you've been a part of World Central Kitchen, what are some other ways that you've gotten involved, or do you have any favorite WCK memories?
Yeah, I mean, so many. It's really hard to think of them all. And we did a great dinner last year. I think that was a lot of fun. Brought people together, raised some money. That was good. I was in Tokyo with World Central Kitchen right at the beginning of the pandemic. That was also like a very intense time that I don't think I really realized what was happening until I was, thought about it afterwards. Everything around COVID and the ballpark. I mean, there was, the ballpark was a short period of time, but I think the COVID activation went on for a year and a half, and there was definitely lots of opportunities throughout there to be involved and stuff. So anytime something happens in the DC area, I always try and, jump in and help.
Yeah, he was ready to go for our snowstorms. He needed to hop on the food truck and help us get soup out to people. Fortunately, he was called off that mission. I'd love to hear from you, Matt, on why chefs and cooks are so well suited to support their communities immediately after crises.
I think in general, chefs we're well connected. We have, hundreds of people coming through our doors every day. So it's easy for us to kind of get the word out, to get volunteers. We often have food ready to go in our walk-in. So it's easy for us to activate immediately. And we have trust with the community. We have years of building these hospitality connections of people coming through our doors and celebrating holidays with us. So, people know if we're cooking that the food's going to be good and, we're ready to go.
Yeah. And increasingly, chefs have bigger and bigger platforms and a presence on social media. And so people look to you when in times of crisis to know what's going on. So that's been really, really helpful, too.
Agreed.
So thank you, Matt. Thank you for sitting down with me today.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for your dedication to our mission. Thank you to all of our Chef Corps members for your contributions over the past years. You're going to be a big part of our 15th year and well into the future, whether you're volunteering in our relief kitchens, whether you're helping us make connections on the ground, or even fundraising to support our efforts. Thank you all so much. If you'd like to learn more about the Chef Corps program, go to WCK.org. Thanks, guys. Back to you.
Thank you so much, Laura, and a huge shout out to Chef Matt for being such a strong partner to WCK over the years. He's always willing to jump in and serve meals whenever needed, alongside, of course, the rest of our Chef Corps members who are just such an invaluable part of WCK. Thank you, everyone. The pandemic was truly our biggest response up until February of 2022, when the Russian invasion of Ukraine began. 3 years and now nearly 300 million meals later, this ongoing response is our largest to date. Before we dive into our conversation, let's take a moment to look back at those first weeks in Ukraine when WCK began feeding people impacted by this unimaginable crisis.
Let's try to concentrate in what we're good at, which we've been keeping fairly simple because we do food and we do water, and that's what we do in emergencies. But then we even in emergencies, which emergencies do we respond? And we kind of said, okay, natural events, but yeah, hurricanes, tornadoes, volcanoes. But now I cannot believe we are in the middle of a refugee crisis created by a war that should not be happening. And man, this breaks your heart. Breaks your heart.
The war in Ukraine began on February 24th, and on February 25th, my colleague Sam arrived with 2,000 hot meals for people entering from Ukraine.
Bananas are the perfect food. Why? Because you peel them, they're clean. The fruit that comes with its own container.
Thank you very much. Danke schön. Merci beaucoup. Gracias.
There are 7 border crossings between Poland and Ukraine, and we are serving hot meals at every one of them.
probably the best one we've done yet.
We're also in Hungary, Romania, Moldova, as well as Ukraine itself, and will continue to grow as refugees continue to flee the country of Ukraine.
Wow, I'm always deeply moved by the start of our journey in Ukraine. As a native Hungarian, they're my neighbors. So I have the greatest honor to welcome Yulia Vistetska, our Ukrainian communications lead, who has been with us from the very beginning. Yulia, thank you for joining us this evening. You're reporting live from Ukraine. Your time, in the evening, you're sharing your stories of hope and resilience from communities navigating these challenging times. Thank you for being with us.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much.
Yulia, you've worked alongside WCK since those first weeks after the war began. What were those early days like in terms of connecting with impacted communities, just making sure that they were getting the meals that they needed?
Yes, the early days were, of course, incredibly intense and emotional for everybody involved. When the full-scale invasion began in Ukraine, millions of people fled their homes almost overnight, often with nothing but their clothes on their backs. The need for food was immediate, especially in areas where infrastructure has been destroyed, grocery stores were emptied, and access to basic supplies became nearly impossible. And WCK had to act quickly to identify the areas with the greatest needs and find ways, safe ways to reach those communities. It was quite chaotic. Honestly, our team worked round the clock to establish supply chains, to find some partners all across Ukraine, local organizations, and get the meals prepared and delivered to the recipients. In some instances, our teams worked under air raid alerts or even attacks, but the dedication never wavered because we understood that every meal delivered was a lifeline for somebody in need. And thanks to those early efforts and the commitment that continues today, WCK has now provided over 275 million meals to the impacted communities in Ukraine, which proves how vital this work remains today.
You. And do you see any major changes in the way this response has evolved and transformed over the past 3 years? Can you walk us through those?
Yes, absolutely. The response has evolved significantly in both its scope and the strategic approach. What began as an emergency response initiative has now developed into something very comprehensive, into a big operation designed to tackle long-term challenges. One of the most impactful changes, in my opinion, has been the leadership of dedicated Ukrainian team. The deep understanding of local cultural nuances, the regional needs, and ever-changing dynamics has been invaluable. And the team's ability to adapt and build trust with the communities that we are serving has significantly enhanced the effectiveness of our efforts. Initially, our priority was providing immediate relief, like delivering hot meals to the people fleeing the front lines or trapped in high-risk areas. But over the time, we expanded our efforts to include food kits, which is a safer and more sustainable option for families in need, especially in high-risk zones. To date, we have distributed over 10 million food kits, including 30,000 vegetable kits just last month in Ukraine, supporting families who are unable to grow their own food during the colder months. Beyond providing meals, we have launched many programs to empower families, such as special distribution initiatives, which help them work towards self-reliance. We have also rolled out projects in liberated areas with a strong focus on restoring a sense of normalcy, like distributing festive meals and gifts during holidays. This Christmas, for example, we distributed gingerbread Christmas trees for children to assemble and decorate, which was an amazing experience for the children, especially in areas where there is basically no opportunities for them to have any fun. Additionally, our partnerships with local Ukrainian restaurants and chefs continue to be the cornerstone of our operations. And these collaborations allow us to serve traditional dishes, soups, which hold deep cultural significance. So, as you can understand, we have come a long way, continuously improving and adapting our approach to meet the changing needs of the people we support.
That's great. Now, this question gets asked a lot from our incredibly generous and engaged donors. What types of meals do we serve that bring hope and comfort to impacted families?
So there are many meals, but generally our meals are designed to be culturally appropriate, offering evacuated individuals and affected families a connection to home through food that we serve. Many people arriving from occupied territories or immediate front lines see the WCK tent and they find familiar dishes like borscht, potato stew, stuffed peppers waiting for them there, and trying their home food after such a long traumatic journey is often deeply healing. It reminds them of the better times and restores a sense of normalcy. Personally, stuffed peppers always remind me of my mother's cooking and bring a sense of warmth and my family, and that's the comfort that we hope to provide with every meal that we serve. We also focus on festive and regional specialties to meet the emotional and cultural needs of those that we serve. During Christmas, our culinary partners across the country prepared special dishes like Olivia salad and mimosa salad, which are particularly frequently cooked in Ukraine during this time, and it holds big significance during holidays. So these meals allow people to celebrate holidays, at least in some way, and create some moments of hope and joy during festive times. And ultimately, these meals are more than just nourishment. They're a way to reconnect to their culture, to heal, to remind people that they're not alone, no matter what they have endured.
Thank you, Yulia. And I share your like for stuffed peppers. As an Eastern European myself, it definitely transports me right back home whenever I have it. It reminds me of my grandmother and my own mother. Definitely deeply feel that connection to your culture and that hope and comfort that it brings. Thank you, Yulia, for sharing these powerful stories and giving us a little glimpse into the heart and resilience of the Ukrainian people. We appreciate you. Now, shifting to 2023, it was another year of significant responses for WCK. From devastating earthquakes to launching our work in the Middle East, our teams faced complex environments and overcame incredible obstacles to get meals to those in need. I'm joined now by John Torpy, WCK's response director, and Marwa Saudi, our Jordanian relations coordinator, to talk about how we've navigated these challenges. John is joining me from Mayat today. He's on activation there in response to the devastating cyclone there, and Marwa is joining from Jordan. John, let's start with Morocco. Can you share a little background on this response and how you and the team were able to reach impacted communities, and what were some of the challenges that you had to work through?
Yeah, thanks, Tunde. Morocco was quite difficult. 6.8 earthquake in the middle of the Atlas Mountains. Devastation on both the north and south sides of the mountains. Extremely difficult to navigate across. Again, rugged mountains, but there were small communities dotting the whole landscape. We had no idea what the extent of the damage was, so we needed to spread out quickly. We immediately hired helicopters to assess the damage. We'll go around, we'll stop at different communities, find out how they're doing, find out what they need, and then take that back to be able to get them aid as quickly as possible. One of the knock-on effects of having the helicopters not only was to bring them food quickly, but we were able to evacuate people from the area that really needed critical health care. So as we were assessing the area, we quickly decided that deliveries of hot meals in some places were going to be possible and some impossible in others. If we're going to be successful, we needed to engage the local populations if we're going to do this right. And when I say we drove to the end of the road, that was only halfway in these mountains. We needed donkeys, we needed carts, we needed horses, and a lot of muscle to get them what they needed. So as I said, we set up a few kitchens, one on the north side, one on the south side. We were able to deliver meals to where we could. From that point on, we needed to get creative. So we decided that we were going to purchase kitchens. We're going to purchase small kitchens and we're going to purchase large kitchens. And we're going to get these out into the communities whichever way possible. We reached out to local community leaders. We found out what their needs were, and we would set up either a big kitchen in the middle of the community, or we would hand out smaller kitchens to the people that maybe didn't have access to a kind of a central area to work in. And then we would deliver them food every 5 to 7 days. We would drive to the end of the road. They would meet us there with donkeys. We would load them up and they would take the food back to their communities. It was really, really cool sight to see. So Morocco, all of the above. We did a little bit of everything to get as much food as we could to the people there, and really successful operation when we start thinking outside the box.
Wow. I mean, we weren't kidding when I started off our event today, when I said any which way possible, we will get meals to where they are needed, whether that's through, ATVs or helicopters or on the backs of donkeys. We've seen the images, donkeys, definitely prominent players in this operation. Thank you so much, John, for sharing how you and the team navigated the providing support to the most remote areas. It's truly a testament to the resilience and adaptability that defines WCK. Thank you. And speaking of adaptability and resilience, in the fall of 2023, WCK responded to the conflict in the Middle East, which presented massive logistical challenges in getting food and supplies into the region. Given the complexity of the situation, what were some of the biggest challenges you faced getting food and support to those in need? And what moments stood out as key to helping us push forward despite everything coming our way and despite all the obstacles?
Yeah, this was a very challenging one. Two of the biggest things that we really struggled with was access points, where to bring food in, where to bring aid in, because there wasn't many at the time, and then what we could bring in. There was a lot of restrictions to what we could actually bring in. There were things that we just could not bring in. We couldn't get them through security. There were delays. There may have been. Again, we only had one access point, so we made some more. We worked with the Kingdom of Jordan. We were helping them with airdrops. I was on a plane where we did airdrops over Gaza while we're still trucking in food from Jordan. We had trucks coming from Egypt. We had trucks coming from the West Bank, all lined up as quickly as possible to get food into Gaza. And then we kind of partnered with the United Arab Emirates and Cyprus to be able to get food by water. We actually rented a barge, and we were the first people to be able to ship pallets of food into central and northern Gaza, where it was really, really needed. So that was there was just so many different ways. We were knocking on every door that we can to try and get food in there. On top of that, in Gaza, power was non-existent. Again, everything was controlled and monitored going in. Restrictions. We had to get creative, and that came from our trying to find different access points, trying to do different things. But the real creativity came from the people of Gaza. It was, I can't say enough about the people of Gaza and what they were able to accomplish with so little, with what we provided for them, and we tried to provide them as much as we could. But it seemed for a little while, we were just constantly setting up kitchens, constantly constantly setting up here, setting up there, but always having to move because of hostilities. We were always on the go, and these people were just amazing how quickly they could pack up and get moving again and get cooking again and set up a new kitchen from scratch to be able to feed their people. It was just wonderful to see. And for the most part, we didn't meet, I don't think we met 90% of the people in Gaza. We had put together a small team and they did all the work. They were the ones that hired the chefs, the cooks, the dishwashers, the truck drivers. They hired the people that were running the forklifts, and it was just a wonderful experience to work with them and see what they accomplished. And that's why we're over 100 million meals in Gaza right now. It truly is the people of Gaza that are making this work. And so I'm going to introduce Marwa, and she's going to talk about a couple of the novel things that we did to kind of help and facilitate the feeding in Gaza.
Thank you, John. And thank you, Tunde. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. Yeah, as John said, it's indescribable, really, what we're seeing every day there, and the persistence of the people there, and how they are always like flexible and agile to respond to all the difficult situations and circumstances that they're facing every day. And as John said earlier, that we had to be creative. So as we've been creative with delivering food from different, using different areas, or like using land and air and sea, we also had to be creative with our own kitchens. And in the response to the scarcity of gas and electricity, WCK innovated stoves that utilize eco-pellets as a fuel source. This innovative solution has enabled WCK to continue providing hot meals to communities in need, even in areas with limited access to traditional energy and sources. So as you see here, we provided them with huge pots and made sure that they have all the kitchen tools that they need so that they can cook for the communities around them, because it was impossible for WCK to set up their kitchens while we're not able to be physically there. So as John said, the people were wonderful. We provided them with all the tools that they may need so that they can feed the communities and all the people living in camps and all the displaced people all over Gaza. So that, and as we say, like, people were feeding people. And with that, like, we were able to establish like 85 community kitchens till now. This is one of them that you're seeing here. And we also were able to establish like 3 main kitchens, WC kitchens, where each kitchen can cook up to 50,000 meals per day, again, to feed the people around the areas. And yeah.
Marwa, we just had a recent delivery into Gaza. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Oh, you mean the fruits?
The bread truck.
And the bread truck, of course. I was waiting for Tunde to ask me about this.
Oh, sorry.
No. John
I was
is
so
doing my
excited
work.
about it. I was so excited about it.
This is such a great, if I had 3 words, I think ingenuity, community, empathy, those would all be everything that I would use to describe our work in Gaza, especially, but also everywhere else in the world. But we are currently working with teams based in Jordan to continue ensuring meals are getting to communities any which way in Gaza. And yes, John, there are some recent updates which we're so thrilled to share. All of us are super excited. This is brand new. We have a mobile bread bakery. And Marwa, if you could just share more about these innovative culinary efforts and how they're helping us address the needs on the ground.
Actually, this is a super exciting project, and I understand John's excitement, of course. We're all excited about it. So the Jordanian government had donated this bread truck. It's a mobile truck, so you can move it from one place to another, obviously. And we've been working with the Jordanian government to get this mobile bakery in Gaza since April. And only last month, we were able to get it in Gaza with a lot of coordination, of course. And we were able to place it in Zomi's kitchen in the south of Gaza, specifically in Khan Yunis. This initiative has already proven to be amazing, as yesterday, and after only a few days of testing, we had produced 18,000 loaves of bread. However, WCK's goal and the people there, and actually the people there are like excited to achieve, to increase this this number and to reach like a rate of 3,000 loaves per hour. And they're planning to extend their working hours as well, so that they're able to produce 45,000 loaves of bread per day. And I cannot, of course, tell you like how bread is important in this culture, and I'm sure all over the world. But bread is a cornerstone of the local cuisine in Gaza and an integral component of almost every meal. This initiative is really very important to provide comfort to the affected people there in Gaza. You can use the bread to scoop food. You can eat it alone. Like, bread is really something very important and truly provide this sense of comfort that we all are working towards achieving. And actually, there's a surprise that, another surprise for you, John, and for everyone. The Jordanian government is also willing to donate another 2 bakery trucks, or another 2 mobile trucks. And we're waiting. As I told you, like, we're still testing and we're still working. So again, we're still also like looking for feedback of the people there who are working in the bakery on how we can modify it and make it more more useful there, or more like working better to serve the communities there in Gaza.
Amazing. Just like in Eastern Europe, stuffed peppers play such an important role in people's lives. Bread in Gaza is such a lifeline to so many. It's at the heart of their diet. And now, with many of our most complex responses, how have our past learnings informed how we operate in these 2 responses that we just talked about? John, do you want to weigh in?
Yeah, sure. One of the, the main thing for me, and I think for all the teams out here in the field, is to make sure we're getting in quickly. We want to get there as soon as possible. These are when people are the most devastated. These are when people really need the most help. And then the second thing, I think for all of us, is to really tailor to the needs of the communities that we're dealing with. Use them, listen to them, and really be able to give them what they're looking for. Because really, at the end of the day, we're helping them, but we're comforting them too. We're letting them know that somebody out there is thinking about them, somebody there cares, and we just want to make sure that we're doing all of those things during disasters, and we're really trying to help people as much as possible.
Yeah. And we had one more heartwarming news that we could share, is that we have been successful in delivering fruits to children, a first for a very, very long time, and a very, very long time. And you'll see a little bit of footage here. Those children are celebrating, and just seeing the pure joy on their faces is incredible.
Yeah, that was also another amazing moment to see how children and families receive the fruit, especially in the north. We were able to distribute fruits, namely apples, oranges, and bananas in the north of Gaza only last month. So it was like the first time people see fruit and whole fruit and eat fruit for like since 14 months. So the amount of joy and gratitude that we've seen, nobody could imagine. Like, I remember this video that I saw of a woman holding the fruit in her hands and just singing and dancing, and she couldn't really believe herself that she's holding fruits and eating them actually after like 14 months of not seeing any of that. And in moments like that, this is when we all feel like why we're here, and we're really proud to be part of this, and even like playing this little role to make this happen, and to see the happiness and joy that people show us. And with the children, I also remember seeing the children when they received the the juice and the chocolate milk or the banana milk, they were over the moon. They were just, it was pure joy for them to be drinking this juice or eating these oat bars that they haven't seen in a year almost.
Yeah, this is truly where every meal counts. And we're just, this is why we focus on doing everything that we can to meet the needs of these communities and seeing that joy that and hope and comfort that food can provide. Thanks so much to both of you, John and Marva, for sharing your insights and progress in the Middle East. It's really inspiring to hear how you've navigated the complexities of this response. There are many challenges, and I'm so proud of this team who have just overcome just about anything thrown their way. Now, I want to turn our focus to another region that's seen immense impact in recent years, and that's Mexico. In 2023, we responded to Hurricane Otis, and then just last fall, we were back again for Hurricane John, which, by the way, hit at the same time as Hurricane Helene and Milton here in the US, and we were just coming off of the tail end of our response in the Caribbean for Hurricane Beryl. And leading both of those responses in Mexico was Juan Camillo, one of our response directors at WCK. Welcome, Juan Camillo.
Thanks, Tunde. Thanks, everyone, for joining us and being here with us. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here.
Thanks for being with us. Can you walk us through what Acapulco looked like after Hurricane Otis hit in 2023? What did the immediate aftermath look like, and how did we mobilize to get the teams on the ground and start serving meals so quickly?
Perfect. But let me start with something to give context what we were saying about like last year with Milton, Helene, and John. Also, when Hurricane Otis impacted Mexico, World Central Kitchen was active in almost, if I don't remember well, 8 places at the same time. That demonstrate how World Central Kitchen is not just responding to just one disaster. We are mobilizing around the world. By the time that I was in Mexico, we have active teams in Morocco, as you see. We have active teams in Armenia, in Middle East, in Ukraine. We also have responses in the US. So with that, I want to explain how World Central Kitchen is not just about one disaster at the same time. We are like operating around the world and trying to respond as many disasters as we can. And I remember that because I was in Armenia when Hurricane Otis started to develop in Mexico, and it was okay, we need to mobilize a team to Mexico. And yes, Acapulco was, I think, one of the toughest disasters that I have been. Hurricane Otis was like the quickest storm that developed from Category 1 to Cat 5 in the history of the Atlantic. It turned like in less than 24 hours this happened. That was one of the main reasons of the impact of the hurricane, because people didn't expect this to be a major hurricane. This was something different one day before, and after one day, it was the worst hurricane that Acapulco and Mexico was going to expect in the history. So that's why hurricane was totally destructive. When we arrived to Mexico, Acapulco, the city that was mainly affected by the hurricane, was totally locked down. No airspace was open. The airport was totally affected. Roads to access via land were closed. Insecurity was also happening in the city, outside of the city, and people were not able to get in and get out. And of course, World Central Kitchen always find a way. And we're one of the first ones to get in. We get our helicopters. We got cars, trucks. We load them with products, and we just knew it that we needed to be there. We were not able to be in the place because it was closed, but we just knew that with the magnitude of the disaster, it was important to be there. So we started selling products, as we always do, send meals, find restaurants. And when we arrived, I personally arrived via helicopter and with teams on the cars, and we was solved as total destruction. Jose Andres, our founder, used an analogy of a dart. In Acapulco, you were able to take a map, throw a dart, and any place will be an impact and damage. Like it was very similar to an earthquake, but it was a hurricane because the magnitude of the damage in buildings and houses, businesses. But it was like that, no communication, no internet. We were like outside during the day without electricity, cell phone, and it was a total challenge. But we find a way, and we quickly started to do an operation. We hired the restaurants that we were able to start cooking. We had a total of 127 restaurants partnering with us and providing these meals. We set up our own kitchen operation. We brought our big tire pans. We bought whatever we can find locally, and we started cooking hot meals to increase the capacity. We did food kits, and we were just providing more than 100,000 food kits around Acapulco for those communities. And of course, whatever it was needed in the community, including water, baby formula, and supporting the local business. and this was in a span of like 6 weeks and 8 weeks that we were in Acapulco. And of course, like one of the biggest challenges was the remote and isolated communities. Hurricanes are tricky because they act at one point, and of course they will go without control to territory. And we had some very isolated communities in Acapulco and around that they were just accessible by boat or by helicopter. And of course we were using by any means whatever was needed. And this was like a community that I love to tell the story. And probably if you follow our work, you have seen that on our social media, and or even Jose Andres has posted about it. That there was a community that was a 60 people community 2 hours away from Acapulco that got isolated because the only bridge that connected mainline with the community was destroyed by the hurricane. And in Washington Central Kitchen, even if it's like 60 people, we're going to do whatever is needed to make sure that those people get a meal. We can feed the thousands that we usually do, but also if there is a small community to feed, we're going to do anything possible to make sure that those meals arrive to these people. And what we did was our founders say like, okay, this community needs a bridge to get access to food and to get back on normal life. And yes, like we fixed the bridge and we were able to keep providing meals to this community, but also we guaranteed that in the long term, this community will go have access and will be not isolated. So that's kind of the challenge that we face, but at the same time that demonstrates that we're going to do whatever is needed to make sure that where a meal is needed and can make an impact, we will be there. And Acapulco was an example of that back in 2023.
Amazing. And that's just another testament to, yes, we provide food, but also we're leaving the community in a better place economically, right? That bridge is there to stay. It's now theirs. They are no longer isolated and cut off. Oh, thank you so much for sharing that story and just walking us through the complexities of these large activations and responses. It's also surprising that a hurricane hit the same community 2 years in a row, especially since this area doesn't typically experience storms of this magnitude. What lessons from 2023 were you able to glean and apply to the response in 2024? And how did your approach to community outreach and connection evolve the second time around?
Totally, Tunde, I think it's surprisingly, but it's getting less and less surprisingly because of the impacts that has climate change in the world, and we're seeing how this is happening more and more. And I think that Acapulco last year again for Hurricane John was just a demonstration of, yes, it's happening, the climate crisis is a reality, and we're having more and more hurricanes happening, and they're becoming stronger, faster. As I explained with Otis, Hurricane John was the same. And yes, as you're saying, Acapulco was not like this place to get hurricanes, and that was one of the main reasons why John was like, okay, it's not going to happen because usually doesn't happen. But okay, last year again, by the same time of the year, in the end of the hurricane season, it was impacted by Hurricane John, and we were there, of course. And as soon as it happened, we deployed our teams, and this time it was easier, better, and I think like more straightforward because we already have our communities working for us, and what we do in Washington Kitchen is work with the local communities, with the local teams, restaurants, and that's like truly our superpower. So even without being physically there at the beginning, because for example, personally I was in Poland, some team members were in the United States, or people were like trying to come to Acapulco, but we were able to start feeding and providing meals in the day one, because after 1 year, we already had some strong networks in Acapulco that even without us saying, they were already helping, and they understood the value and the importance of feeding people during disaster. So we were able to start quickly. And how we did this, of course, partnering with the best communities. We were able to work with the local neighborhoods, of course, to understand that there is leadership already in those communities. Like we want to work with what is already in place. So our structure and strategy to find those places and work to feed people is just add value to what is already happening. So we partner with the local leaders of each community, with the schools, neighbors, partnering program, with the teachers, with local authorities in each places. In that way, we have be able to reach more and more people. And in last year with Hurricane John, it was different. Last hurricane with Hurricane Otis, because impact was bigger. We were working in the entire state of Guerrero, where Acapulco is located, because it was a zombie storm. It got in before Acapulco, got out, and got in again with more strength to Acapulco. So we had total spread out in the entire state, and we were providing meals to rural areas, as you can see in the video right now, by boat, cruising and driving those meals, by helicopter, again by land, even with horses in this case, because there was like a total devastation. But it was possible just working alongside with communities that already knew what Washington Kitchen was. and the impact that we can do together. And I think that hopefully, as well, when we say goodbye to community, we hope not to come back. But if we need to, I think that there is a community and a group of people in Acapulco, Guerrero, already helping, and we just will support them because now they are worse in the kitchen in Acapulco. So I think that's how we done it.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Juan Camilo. I'm always in awe of just how quickly our teams can mobilize in the aftermath of monster disasters like Hurricane Otis and John. And a huge thank you to all of our panelists for sharing such powerful insights today. It's really inspiring to reflect on the journey that has brought us here. We're always eager to continue building on these experiences. We always say that every activation is a catalyst for us as a learning organization. And thank you all for joining us today and believing in our work. Unfortunately, time flies when we're having fun, so we won't have any time to answer questions, but I know my lovely colleagues on the back have been answering your questions live, so thank you for submitting those. Again, thank you that you're standing with us. We know that good food provides not just nourishment, but comfort and hope, especially in times of crisis. And with your support, WCK has served over 450 million meals worldwide. And your donation today will help us continue our urgent work into the next 15 years, providing fresh meals to communities in need. And we invite you to join us throughout the year as we celebrate our 15 years of feeding hope and resilience. Stay tuned for more events and opportunities to be part of this milestone with us. Thank you for joining us.